what's going on? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm coming at you guys with an RPG reading. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these. Yeah, that's basically it. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these. Wow, that was weird. I don't know if you guys heard that, but I like caught my breath, but I like missed a breath at the same time. It was weird. It's probably because I'm talking so fast. But yes, like I've said for the third time now, it's been a while since I've done an RPG reading. I think the last one I did was talking about when little Alex and the D&D group run by Renavion had a 14-year-old girlfriend back in medieval times, which I wanna mention now because I got some comments on that video about how fucked up that was, and I want to. It was pretty much by alt-left trolls, you know, most liberal trolls and whatnot, but actually, I think it was from everybody on both sides of the political spectrum. But regardless of who it was, I want to say that this was it's a fantasy world based in medieval times where you could have a 14-year-old bride, you could have a 14-year-old wife, which to me doesn't really sound too crazy considering today in most Middle Eastern Islamic countries you can marry a child when they're like 6. So I mean, I don't know why that seemed so far out for everybody, but I mean, like I said, it was a fantasy world. None of us in the group have those kind of views. We don't believe that stuff's any good whatsoever. We hate pedophilia. I personally believe that pedophiles should be sentenced to death. That's my personal opinion. But this video isn't about to get political. I just wanted to say that just because of the flack we got from it on that video. But yeah, everything I talk about on this series and on my podcast, cheap plug, RPG Speak, it's completely fictional. If I talk about any stories, anything I read from role-playing books such as Deadlands, Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, it's all made up. It's all in a fantasy world. So, like I said, if I tell stories or read out of the book, none of that stuff actually happened. All right. So yeah, just bear that in mind for the rest of the series. But all pedophilia aside, today we are going to be reading through an extension of Deadlands. The first RPG reading I ever did was going through the story of the main core book of Deadlands, which was basically the main story and all that. And in this book, it's an extension. Like I said, it's called The Wasted West. The main book's called The Weird West. But this one, basically, honestly, I never really used this book. I used it for some of the weapon. I never really used it for the stories, let's put it that way. Because the stories are basically modules. And if you don't know what module is, it's a pre-made story. Yeah, I never really used this for the story, so I never really read into it. All I know is that it basically just kind of goes back into the stuff in the core rulebook, but it adds more. The stories don't actually start until page 49. In the beginning, it's basically just pages 5 through 33, well, 5 through 49. Or no, 3 through 39, 3 through 49. They basically just say, or yeah, the 3 through 49, they basically just tell you about the new gear, weapons, and whatnot. Once we get to page 49, it goes into Joe's journal. It's like I said, it's a story. It gives you the backstory about a lot of the things in Deadlands and whatnot. So this is where we're gonna begin for this episode. And it's not too long. I might be able to get through this all in one episode. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not, because this goes up to page 100, and I'm starting at 51 now. So this might be another two-parter, but hey, what do you expect when I'm reading through an actual book? So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome. Name's Joe. I'm lying in a bed talking into one of these freaky palm quarters, some Greek gadget my husband would have liked. Why am I doing this? Yesterday a trog ripped me open like an overcooked suffle. I tried to heal it. I'm a Templar, but it didn't take. Now I figure I'm meat, but I'm gonna do some damage to the Reckoners before I go by telling someone else how to kill him. You see, I owe the bastards. Before yesterday, I was the baddest Templar you'd ever meet. I can shoot the eye out of a night terror at 100 yards and turn a Diablo into a nasty side of beef with my sword. I even kicked our Grandmaster's ass once. I'll tell you about it later, if I live that long. Only reason I got ripped up by the Trog was because the first 50 dulled my blade. That's now. I was a different person 13 years ago, before the war. You'd never guess what I did. I was a housewife. I had a good husband. He got drafted and died somewhere in Kansas. I had 2 kids, but I don't want to talk about that. These days I replaced my spatula with a broadsword and my apron for a Templar's tabard, and I'm the baddest one you've ever seen. I'm not bragging. I'm telling you that so you know. I'm deadly serious about crazy things I'm gonna tell you. Because if you don't take me seriously, my ghost is gonna come back and rip out your heart. So listen up and pay attention. I'm going to record everything I know in this little geek box. Every rumor, secret, legend, or fable I've ever heard run around the West, stomping the hell out of critters and that spawn these tales, and you'll screw the Reckoners hard. With a little luck and a lot of work and more blood than you can imagine, we might even destroy the bastards. The Reckoners. Let's start with the Reckoners themselves. There are 1,000 rumors about the freaks, but no one really knows anything. I'll tell you what I think, and what some of the other eggheads and wackos think, but don't take it too seriously. Most of it's probably wrong, because the simple truth is no one knows. At least no one on the good guy's side knows. First off, not every survivor you meet believes in the Reckoners. See, after the 4 horsemen showed up, they mostly relied on the armies they created to fight for them. Folks who weren't in the Horde's way only heard tales. While they probably believe the dead can walk, they're not ready to accept that the 4 horsemen are riding the earth. In an average settlement, I'd say about half the folk believe in the Reckoners. The other half know the tales, but don't believe what they haven't seen with their own eyes. They may not openly disbelieve, they just don't think about it. Even those who do believe don't know much about the Reckoners' history. They just know they appeared out of one of the other lousy mornings and started raising undead hordes. But if you're going to fight them and their creations, you need to know a little more. So I'm going to tell you everything I've learned in the last decade. This is a good time to tell you that my drink of choice is a pink lemonade and sweet iced tea, Arnold Palmer. It's beautiful. I know people say you shouldn't drink on camera, but I'm not on camera. I'm just talking. I'm looking at a book. That wouldn't be a very good face cam video. So I can do whatever the hell I want. Thank you very much. Now we get into the Great Spirit War. It seems the Reckoners have been around for a long time. Maybe as long as time itself. To understand what's going on around here, you have to start over 1,000 years back. The Indians talk about a Great Spirit War that must have happened sometime after the Dark Ages. Evidently, things were pretty dismal back then. Kind of like now. Monsters roamed the countryside, devils stalked the streets, and those fire-breathing dragons of myth might just have been real. So, all the greatest Indian witch doctors of the time, shamans to be more precise, the old ones they were called, decided to do something about it. There was no way they could stop the evil that men do, but they figured out a way to get rid of most of the freaks. The old ones knew that demons managed to Indians were the earthly servants of greater evils, the Reckoners, and that. Without them, the Reckoners were powerless. So they looked for a way to destroy the demons. For that, they had to go into the hunting grounds, a sort of spirit world these things called home. I don't know exactly what happened there, but the old ones found out they couldn't actually destroy the Mantius. They could only keep them from coming to Earth, and that required the old ones to stay in the hunting grounds as well. Raw deal, huh? They did it battling all the most powerful Mantinus at one at a time, until each and every one had been defeated and forced into a binding contract. The agreement was that all the demons would not return to the lands of humanity as long as the shamans remained in the hunting grounds. Enter Raven. Fast forward several hundred years, along came another Indian shaman named Raven. His whole village got wiped out by white men. He carried a grudge to hell and back. Literally. Raven gathered up others who had suffered like him, the last sons, and set off for the hunting grounds through the very same portal the old ones had used. Notice it's always men who cause all the trouble. Damn testosterone junkies. The last sons hunted down and murdered the old ones, which freed the madness from their curse. The demons said thanks by zipping back down to Earth and do what they always do, stir up trouble and cause fear. And it's that fear that feeds the Four Horsemen. That was, in 1863, just as the First Civil War was getting hot and heavy. The Reckoners returned. The Reckoners must have noticed that there was their dinner was on the table just waiting for them. Only the time they weren't fooling around. Only this time they weren't fooling around. My apologies. They were going to fill the earth with fear, then walk upon it in the flesh. The problem was that the Reckoners need a certain level of fear energy to survive, kind of like a fish needs water. That's why they began the long, slow process of terraforming the earth. This time, they invested more of their precious energy to pepper the land with horrors. They didn't overdo it. That would have taken too much energy, and just turned humans into fighters instead of cattle. So they just slowly created monsters here and there, stalking the darkness at the borders of civilization with critters drawn from humanity's nightmares. The investment paid off as each new horror created more fear, slowly building the perfect climate for their master's eventual arrival. Gonna take another drink here. The Harrow. One side effect of all this reckoning crap is that folks don't always stay dead. I'm not talking about plain old zombies. I'm talking about the Harrow. We Templars call them debtors. See, when really tough hombres die, they are occasionally brought back to life by those same madness I've been yapping about. It's not really possession because the human soul inside is in charge most of the time, but occasionally the little demon inside takes over and causes no end mischief and confusion. If you wind up traveling with one of these freaks, keep a close eye on them. The Harrowed are tough as hell and kill monsters like nobody's business, but every now and again, the demons make them do stuff you just won't believe. If one ever gets really out of hand, you might have to put him down. The only way to do that is to destroy the brain. It sends both the soul and the demon inside to hell. So I've been told. Gotta move my mic for a second. The good guys. It's easy to understand why there weren't so many monsters in the world between the Great Spirit War and the start of the Reckoning. But what a lot of folks don't get is why all the good guys' powers seem to come back as well. Truthfully, I don't know, but I suspect it has something to do with independence. If you've ever raised a child, you know you want her to do things for herself most of the time. It's the only way she'll learn. But when things are impossible or the odds are stacked against her, you give her a little help. I suspect the powers of good are like that as well. When the Reckoners weren't messing with us, then God, Allah, the nature spirits, or whatever you believe in, mostly left us alone. There were miracles, but they didn't happen every week like they do now. When the Reckoning started again, the good powers decided to help again. The priests of old could call down columns of hellfire, and we Templars today could heal wounds in it with a touch. That's one theory, anyway. The Book of Revelations. A lot of folks are pretty curious about the Book of Revelations. That's a chapter in the Bible for all you heathens out there. According to the Bible, the four horsemen are supposed to be tools of God riding about the earth, mopping up the unfaithful who were just left behind on Judgment Day, which most folks reckon as the day of bombs dropped. September 23rd, 2081. That doesn't quite jib with the ultimate evil tag most folks attach to the Reckoners. It also doesn't explain why Templars and the few preachers who are left get holy power to use against the Reckoners' minions. I mean, if they're God's tools, why does he give us the powers to fight them? And why are they so damn evil? So, what's the deal? I'm clueless, but here are a few theories I've heard. Once I split a doomsayer from crotch to chin. Don't worry, he was one of the bad kind. He was preaching to a pack of mutants when I caught him. He said he was saying something about how the Norms had it all wrong. The four horsemen aren't evil; they're just tools of the gods, sent to destroy the old civilization, like Noah's flood, and gave birth to the new. Sounds like a cult of doom propaganda to me. A Templar friend of mine says something similar, however, that the Reckoners aren't really evil; they're just doing the only thing they know how to. It just seems evil when one of their minions is stuffing you down its gullet, and that to no end. It doesn't explain why the good guys are still getting power from the heavens. Screw both theories. The Reckoners aren't mindless forces of destruction. They're the sheer embodiment of cunning, diabolical evil. Trust me, I've fought enough of their creations and lost enough family to know. And they aren't mindless tools of some angry god. These monsters know exactly what they're doing. So what's my theory? Glad you asked. An old prospector I ran into said something about the four horsemen being tempted by the devil. At the beginning of time, God created the four servants of destruction, just as described in the Book of Revelations. But they weren't just tools. They were angels, just like the devil. Lucifer told the four horsemen that Judgment Day was tens of thousands of years away, and that once they fulfilled their function, their marker would just destroy them anyway. That doesn't sound so good. So these free-thinking beings rebelled and joined Satan in his fall. The fifth horseman. That's the scariest theory, because it means there's a fifth horseman, Lucifer himself. I don't know the truth, and no one else does either. Just remember one thing. The Reckoners turned our planet into hell on Earth, and we've got to make them pay for it. That means tearing every one of those bastards a new ass shoot by killing off their creations and getting rid of the fear, because that's the only way, that's what they feed off of. See, Reckoners without fear and destruction are like fish out of water. They start to suffocate. Some folks think that now that they're here, we might just be able to destroy them forever if we can drain the water out of the pond, so to speak. That means killing off their monsters and giving people hope, so their fear isn't feeding the horsemen. By the way, anybody who isn't part of the solution is part of the problem. If you can't get the locals to listen up, smack them around a little or tell them that you won't wipe out whatever's threatening them if they don't help. They'll usually see the light. The last war. We used to live in a world of instant news. CNN and other stations beamed signals to satellites and down to our TV sets. Now kids don't even know what TV is, and it's up to folks like me to spread what news gets around. Even in the final months of the war, a lot of people battle in the battle zones without powers and news. These days, once I show my tabard, younger folks always ask me what happened in the final days of the war. Here's my account to the best of my memory. Remember, I was watching soap operas till Roger got drafted, so get off my case if I get a few details wrong. The Hauptmann Survey. I don't know his first name, but Hauptmann was some big-shot geologist who had studied rocks for half a century. Ooh, that had to be exciting. He claimed the world's supply of ghost rock would run out in 20 years. That's still a lot of rock, especially today when all you have to do is bring power to a few hundred folks in the town, But imagine if you were the leader of a superpower responsible for billions. The next decade saw scores of little wars break out over ghost rock deposits, mostly in Africa, South America, Asia Minor, and the Far East. Heavy industrialized nations could still get ghost rock from their own deposits, as well as new ones that had been discovered in the distant, faraway system. So they stayed out of it for the most part. Of course, they had to pay Wasatch injuries to ship things to and from the alien system through the tunnel, but it was still well worth the expense. The tunnel is a gateway in space that leads to the faraway system. It was open in 2044. In case you're not familiar with it. In 2047, things in the faraway went to hell. The aliens on the planet Banshee buddied up with a bunch of traitorous humans and attacked. Without getting into the details of the faraway war, let's just say it made it very expensive for anyone to ship ghost rock back home. All eyes turned greedily into the areas richest in ghost rock. Out here in the west, that was the Black Hills, scattered veins in Iraqis, and the motherlode of them all in the maze. They used to say that whoever controlled the ghost rock controlled the world. I guess some folks took that to heart. Viva Esmeralda. You can imagine just how tense everyone was about the ghost rock running out. I suppose it was inevitable, men being men and all, that the fighting would eventually invoke most of every nation on Earth. The first real incident of the coming war occurred in Faraway. Besides the ghost rock mine on Banshee, most folks used to mine ore from the asteroid belt as well. One day around 2077 or so, the Latin American Alliance or trawler named the Esmeralda got in trouble far out in the system and signaled for help. A Confederate ship relatively nearby, the Dillinger, received the SOS and communicated with the Esmeralda for a time, but then left without providing assistance. No one knows why to this day. After beaming SOS transmissions to other ships, both vessels were hit by asteroids and destroyed. The war begins. The Latin Alliance protested the Dillinger's murderous breach of interplanetary conduct and petitioned the UN for sanctions. Some fishy stuff happened, but the UN never took a stand, and the Confederates went unpunished. Things turned from bad to worse when a group of Mexican tourists were murdered in Texas. LATAM then petitioned the UN once more, this time demanding the Confederate States of America pay reparations for their many acts of cowardice and violence. By ceding South Carolina, which they claimed had been stolen from them over 200 years ago anyway, I guess the Alliance figured if it couldn't get justice, it would get ghost rock. Of course the UN said no, having about as much authority among its members as a minnow swimming with sharks. The Silent War. The last war started with a whimper, and no one guessed it would end in such a bang. Months of mysterious sabotage, computer viruses, and strangeness crippled the rebels' defense and spread their resources thin. Then, on February 22, 2018, LATAM launched a joint land, air, and sea attack. Alliance paratroopers secured key CSA anti-air installations, allowing the Air Force to bomb Confederate military bases. I'm told this was quite an accomplishment and that the CSA's computerized defenses may have been hit with some kind of virus first. Air superiority allowed the land force, made up of a huge Mexican army, to move north virtually unopposed. Mexican motorized infantry and armored divisions rolled through Southern California and Texas before drawing their line in the sand at Phoenix, Arizona. But it was the Sea Force that proved the most effective in actually conquering the SoCal maze. A network of submarines, saboteurs, and seaplanes sunk CSA ships in their harbors just before dawn. Minutes later, missile boats took out coastal batteries out on the outskirts of the maze, then bombarded towns. That cleared the way for the second land force and fleet of hydrofoils loaded with thousands of LATAM troops. General Ramirez. The Mexican land force was commanded by General Carlos Santa Anna Ramirez. If you know anything about history, you'll recognize Ramirez's middle names. I didn't until Roger told me. Santa Anna was the Mexican general who killed all those folks at the Alamo, got whipped in 1846, then invaded the Maze in 1877. It's strange how history repeats itself. Anyway, the Mexicans had a 200-year-old chip on their shoulder, and they kicked serious ass in the first few months of the war. Then they hit what was supposed to be their last objective, Phoenix. Trouble was, no one told the people of Phoenix they were supposed to lose. They held out for months before Ramirez finally took the city in a bloody assault, and they accepted no quarter for their Pyrrhic victory. The Siege of Los Angeles. Oh, of Lost Angeles. Sorry. Yeah, the Siege of Los Angeles. Further west, the LATAM amphibious force went through SoCal like a hot knife through butter. But the butter had a lump of iron at the bottom, the city of Los Angeles. I know you kids out there don't learn much these days, so I'll tell you about the holy city of Los Angeles later on. For now, all you need to know was that it was a holy city full of monks, priests, and so on. Like the Vatican, if you know what that is. It even had its own army, the Guardian Angels. I don't know what possessed the LATAM invaders to attack Los Angeles, the city that wasn't part of the Confederacy, but they did. They went through the suburbs of southern LA with no problem, but they couldn't crack the inner city, the Citadel. So they besieged it. Remember Phoenix? While the Western forces tried to starve out the Angels and the Mexicans got bogged down in Phoenix. The Rebs got their act together. By May of 2078, the Confederate Army was ready for a counterattack. Their goal was to cut the land forces overland lines of supply and communication. The rebel force was commanded by General Harley Harlow. They called him that because he rode a big Harley everywhere. The Mexicans were ready for hordes of Confederate troops, but they weren't ready for CSA troops and the newest generation of powered battlesuits. With cries of "Remember Phoenix," the 1st Armored Infantry blasted through Phoenix and sent the Mexican army retreating into SoCal and northern Mexico. But Ramirez wasn't done yet. He had his LATAM allies abandon the siege of Los Angeles and move southeast to the Colorado River, between Arizona and SoCal. The plan was for his fleeing troops to lead Harlow's force into an ambush. The Battle of Colorado. Harlow's soldiers rode smack to the trap and took it hard and fast. The 1st Armored Infantry took the brunt of the losses. Still, the Rebs were in a mean mood, and by the end of the day had overrun the ambush. No quarter was expected or given on either side. In the end, Ramirez managed to rally what was left of his forces and retreat before they could be completely annihilated by angry CSA survivors. Trail of Blood. While the Confederate Air Force dueled with the MAF in the skies, and the two navies fought in the Pacific and in the narrow channels of the Maze, Harlow kept the Mexicans reeling. During a 2-week-long running chase, Ramirez lost nearly half his force. The carnage only stopped when he reached fresh reinforcements newly landed outside Los Angeles. By now, the Confederates had moved reinforcements west as well. The two forces had fought one last battle 60 miles south of LA, but the invaders were doomed to lose. Ramirez decided to get his keister out of town. LATAM hydrofoils picked up the remnants of the assault force in Vamoose. Unfortunately for them, the CAF had just won air superiority. The rebel fighters went in low and chased the hydrofoils through the chasms of the maze and the running battle that would have made one hell of a movie. The Channel of Doom is now filled with sunken ships, wrecked planes, and the bloated corpses of those fleeing Mexican troops. Ramirez's secret. One of the small groups that was captured, to everyone's surprise, held General Ramirez himself. You gotta give the man a few points for loyalty. He stayed until all his troops were aboard transports and then got cut off and surrounded before he could escape. Even worse for him, and maybe for the world too, he didn't manage to get himself killed. Confederate interrogators didn't care much that Ramirez had done his own troops right. All they remembered was the massacre at Phoenix and the bloody battles that they had fought in Colorado and Los Angeles. They extracted information from him and discovered a secret only a few had guessed. Although the Latin American alliance had fared well in the 21st century, real money and technology for their invasion had come from a coalition of nations led by the United States, the so-called Northern Alliance. Even more outrageous, the NA had been conducting a covert war on SoCal for years, especially since President John Romero got in office. From spiking wells with strange drugs to creating mysterious creatures that frighten settlers in and out in the isolated towns, the NA had slowly been trying to drive the Confederates from the maze to reclaim all of California and its valuable ghost rock deposits for itself. The whole Esmeralda Dillinger incident had been a convenient spark. Welcome to World War III. Roger and I lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Like most every other northerner, we were none too pleased to find out our government, particularly President Romero, an ex-movie director of all things, was behind all of this. So, we impeached the son of a bitch just before the '78 election. The new president, our sixth female commander-in-chief, was Mary Rose Trimmin. She tried to make peace, but it was too late. The Rebs borrowed an idea from the LATAM Alliance and decided they wanted all of California as repayment. To back it up, they said they wouldn't leave northern LA, a Union city, until their demands were met. Every rose has its thorn. Mary Rose showed a little mettle in her word in order to strike on the CSA supply depot and cruise missile site in Oklahoma. I guess she figured the Southerners would take her seriously without getting too pissed off since the facilities were unstaffed. The damn Rebs are nothing if not hot-headed. The missile strike just kindled their fire. The CSA President Alan Sotheby was already under pressure to declare war on the northern instigators. So he did. His troops just over the border in North Cal threw out all the Union civilians in LA and started setting up defenses. Both sides mobilized and gathered troops on either side of the Mason-Dixon Wall all across the country. It didn't take long for some trigger-happy fighter jockeys to start launching missiles at each other. And the next thing you know, the Civil War was on. It didn't stop there. Both the USA and the CSA had treaties all over the world during earlier conflicts between the North American neighbors, and other nations had stayed out of our way. This time, Ghost Rock was getting scarce, and everyone wanted a peace. I can't remember which way every nation went. Oh, I just figured out how to use the hyperlinks on the Gizmo. Touch the vid pad on the right link there. It will take you to some extra notes I've made. Anti-technology grand. Ain't technology grand. I'll list what nations I do remember. Few foreign troops actually landed in North America in the first year, but some did. The rest fought all over the globe. The NA and the SA fought everywhere they rubbed borders, or there was a big supply of ghost rock. You should have seen the carnage. Hover tanks, armored battle suits, nerve gas, bioweapons, killer satellites. Humanity's ability to kill had never been greater. The first year was far and away the worst, and figured out how devastating the new secret weapons were. Casualties per unit averaged out at 50%. Civilian casualties were even higher in towns and cities near the borders and next to the Dixon Wall. Roger got drafted in late '79. I would have been drafted too. Women got the draft starting in 2020, I think, but I lucked out. Roger didn't. He died in Kansas in March '81. I don't know what day. They found him several days later after the Battle of Lawrence. His body had been shredded too badly to send home. All they sent me was his dog tags and a little American flag. Thanks for that. I buried his tags in a coffin that wiped out our life savings. It's funny, but that's why I'm still here. I was out at his family's cemetery in the country when the bombs fell. Rest in peace, Roger. And that is where we're going to end it today, guys. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this. When we come back with this, we're going to start a Truman's assassination, and there will probably be another video after that, depending on how long I record. Yeah, I really enjoy doing the series. I know it might not seem like it because I don't post it often. Sorry, I'm moving my mic. I don't post it as often as I said I would. Because I remember I set out something I was going to post like every Wednesday or every Saturday or something like that. But obviously, when I say those things, they should be taken with a grain of salt because chances are it's not going to happen. I am terrible at making schedules and keeping promises. Not keeping promises per se, but when it comes to YouTube, I'm terrible at sticking to schedules. But yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode. And like I say this whenever I read through Deadlands. If it sounds jumbled, that's because the way they word it in the book is really weird. Because it's supposed to be a Wild Western type of lingo, you know, like Texas and whatnot. So more southern, like Western South or Southwestern or whatever you want to say. So, I mean, it's really country in tone, let's just put it that way. So that's how they word it, and they use the lingo and everything like that. So it sounds clunky, and I mess up wording a lot, but that's just part of the game. But yeah, post in the comments what you guys want to see me talk about next. If you guys want to see me talk about, tell another story from D&D, or if you want it from the D&D group that Renavion runs, or if you want to hear a story from the group that I run in Deadlands, I will be more than happy to do that. So post in the comments below what you guys want to see me talk about next on RPG Speak. Don't forget to, if you want, support me on Patreon. It'll help out a shitload because it is not easy to make these videos with no money. So yeah, help out with that. Help out by donating on Patreon if you guys want to. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying it'd be greatly appreciated. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter if you do not already, because I post a bunch of updates about RPG Speak on my Patreon, and I just generally tweet out random stuff. A lot of it has to do with WWE, a lot of it has to do with politics. It's great fun. It's really great fun. I'm a sarcastic asshole. But other than that, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Yeah. I guess all there is left to say is stay cool, Jammas. See ya.